Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Puravikacharya Tatarasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Puravikacharya Tatarasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Priyat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Today is July 4th, Independence Day. This is the real independence, Harinam. So usually there's a fireworks display at the Fair Park, and we go down by the Comerica Bank on the grass there and have Harinam. So we usually assemble there about 8:45 or 9 o'clock and do some Harinam and then watch the fireworks afterwards. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Yep. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We can read this together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayeshva vajreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. My regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and my rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart and is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, and we're going to start on, text 26, and we're going to go till text 40. So the section we're about to read is very connected to what the previous classes have been about. And this section, it's going to give us the kind of the background of our situation right now in the material world. This knowledge that we're about to receive is kind of the foundation of our Krishna consciousness. If we understand our nature as a soul, then in that position we can act in Krishna consciousness. Can someone read the first text, please?
The living entity by nature has minute independence to choose his own good or bad fortune. He forgets his supreme master, knowledge of Godhead. He gives himself up.
I think we need new batteries. Yeah, the batteries have been draining recently, I think. We need to replace them.
Being influenced by the modes of material nature, he identifies himself with the body, and for the interest of the body, he becomes attached to various activities. Sometimes he is under the influence of the mode of ignorance, sometimes the mode of passion, and sometimes the mode of goodness. The living entity thus gets different types of bodies under the modes of material nature.
So this text, it touched on what Paramrita was talking about the other day, that we have our independence and we chose to forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's how we ended up in this world, and now we're under the influence of the modes of nature. Next text, please.
Those who are situated in the mode of goodness act piously according to Vedic injunctions. Thus they are elevated to the higher planetary systems where the demigods live. Those who are influenced by the mode of passion engage in various types of productive activities in the planetary systems where human beings live. Similarly, those influenced by the mode of darkness are subjected to various types of misery and live in the animal kingdom.
Text, please.
Covered by the mode of ignorance in the material nature, the living entity is sometimes a male, sometimes a female, sometimes a eunuch, sometimes a human being, sometimes a demigod, and sometimes a bird, an animal, and so on. In this way, he is wandering within the material world. His acceptance of different types of bodies is brought about by his activities under the influence of the modes of nature.
The living entity is exactly like a dog who, overcome with hunger, goes from door to door for some food. According to his destiny, he sometimes receives punishment and is driven out, and at other times receives a little food to eat. Similarly, the living entity, being influenced by so many desires, wanders in different species of life according to destiny. Sometimes he is high and sometimes he is low. Sometimes he goes to the heavenly planets, sometimes to hell, sometimes to middle planets, and so on.
So we're seeing how the living entity is not very stable. It's always in a different kind of body, man, female, bird, animal, and different planetary systems. Sometimes he's higher and lower. We're going to come back to this text later.
The living entities are trying to counteract different miserable conditions pertaining to providence, other living entities, or the body and mind. Still, they must remain conditioned by the laws of nature despite all attempts to counter these laws.
A man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another.
Narada continued, "Oh, who are free from all sinful activity. No one can counteract the effects of fruitive activity simply by manufacturing a different activity devoid of Krishna consciousness. All such activity is due to our ignorance. When we have a troublesome dream, we cannot relieve it without a troublesome hallucination. One can counteract a dream only by awaking. Similarly, our material existence is due to our ignorance and illusion. Unless we awaken to Krishna consciousness, we cannot be relieved of such dreams. For the ultimate solution of all problems, we must awaken to Krishna consciousness."
Okay, so who are we talking about in these verses? Us, yeah. So this is Narada Muni saying our position in this world. Next text.
Sometimes we suffer because we see a tiger in a dream or a snake in a vision, but actually there is neither a tiger nor a snake. Thus we create some situation in his subtle form and suffer the consequences. These sufferings cannot be mitigated unless we are awakened from our dream.
These are all such nice verses. Yeah, you could speak for days on just that one previous verse. Yeah. Next text, please.
Real interest of the living entity is to get out of the nuisance that causes him to endure repeated birth and death. The only remedy is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to his representative. Unless one renders devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, one cannot possibly become completely detached from this material world, nor can he possibly manifest real knowledge.
O best of kings, one who is faithful, who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness, and in hearing of the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face.
Okay, so yeah, we're progressing We're trapped in Maya, and this is how we get out, is by hearing of the Lord's activities, which we're doing by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Haribol.
My dear King, in the place where pure devotees live, following the rules and regulations, and thus purely conscious and engaged with great eagerness in hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in that place, if one gets a chance to hear their constant flow of nectar, which is exactly like the waves of a river, one will forget the necessities of life, namely hunger and thirst, and become immune to all kinds of fear, lamentation, and illusion.
Try. Who wants to become free from lamentation and illusion? Haribol. Yeah, fear too. So, yeah, we have to be surrounded by pure devotees, and there's a constant flow of nectar coming from them. Wow. And so that nectar, it wakes us up to who we are. This is the last verse.
Because the conditioned soul is always disturbed by the bodily necessities, such as hunger and thirst, he has very little time to cultivate attachment to hearing the nectarian words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be overly concerned with the body. We should make our life in such a way that we can always hear. So going back to text 31. This is a very nice verse. Shut parito yata dina sarameyo graham charan vindati dyatishtam dandam odanam Tha kama shayo jiva Uchavacha pata brahman Uparyado vamadyeva Yati dishtam priya priyam. Shitparito etadina Yati dishtam priya priya. One more. Yato yatadina Sarameyo graham graham Anvindati yajishtam Dandamo danamevava Tatakama shayo jiva Uchavacha patabraman Viparyadova madhyeva Yidishtam priyam priyam. Haribo. Synonyms together. Shut parita, overcome by hunger. Yata, as. Dina, poor. Saramenya, dog. Griham, from one's house. Griham, to another house. Charan, wandering. Vindati, receives. Yat, whose. Dishtam, according to destiny. Dandam, punishment. Odanam, food. Eva, certainly. Va, or. Tata, similarly. Kama, ashaya, pursuing different types of desires. Jiva, the living entity. Ucha, high. Avacha, low. Pata, on a path. Brahman, wandering. Upari, high. Ada, low. Va, or. Madhye, in the middle. Va or. Yati goes forward. Dishtam, according to destiny. Priya, pleasing. Apriyam, not pleasing. Translation. The living entity is exactly like a dog who, overcome with hunger, goes from door to door for some food. According to his destiny, he sometimes receives punishment and is driven out, and at other times receives a little food to eat. Similarly, the living entity, being influenced by so many desires, wanders in different species of life according to destiny. Sometimes he is high, and sometimes he is low. Sometimes he goes to the heavenly planets, sometimes to hell, sometimes to the middle planets, and so on. Now please read the purport.
The living entity's position is herein likened to a dog's. By chance, a dog may have a very rich owner, and by chance he may become a street dog. As the dog of a rich man, he will live very opulently. Sometimes in Western countries we hear of a master leaving millions of dollars to a dog in his will. Of course, there are many dogs loitering in the street without food. Therefore, to liken the conditional existence of the living entity to that of a dog is very appropriate. An intelligent human being, however, can understand that if he has to live the life of a dog, he had best become Krishna's dog. In the material world, a dog is sometimes elevated and sometimes on the street, but in the spiritual world, Krishna's dog is perpetually, eternally happy. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung Vaishnava Thakura Tomara Kukura Baliya Jana More. In this way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers to become a Vaishnava's dog. A dog always keeps himself at his master's door and does not allow any person unfavorable to the master to enter. Similarly, one should engage in the service of a Vaishnava and try to please him in every respect. Unless one does so, he does not make spiritual advancement apart from spiritual advancement in the material world. If one does not develop his qualities in goodness, he cannot be promoted to the higher planetary system, as confirmed by Bhagavad Gita 14.2.
Urdvam gachanti sattvasta madhyate shtanti rajasa jaghanya guna vritista adho gachanti tamasa. Continue.
Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets. Those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. There are many varieties of life in the different planetary systems, and these come about due to the living entities developing his qualities in goodness, passion, and ignorance. If one is in goodness, he is promoted to the higher systems. If in passion, he remains in the middle systems. And if in ignorance, he is pushed down to the lower species of life.
Hari Bol. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we're hearing that we're exactly like a dog. And you should best become Krishna's dog. There's this prayer I really like. I just started to try to learn it recently. But it's the prayer that pujaris say before they go onto the altar or before they start doing the worship. And it basically, I found it encapsulates pretty much our entire philosophy. It goes, I'm by nature the eternal servant of Krishna, but somehow by misfortune, due to being inimical towards him from time immemorial, I'm now wandering in this material existence, being burnt by the threefold miseries. Now by some unimaginable good fortune, by the mercy of my spiritual master, I know that I am Krishna's eternal servant, an infinitesimal spiritual being completely apart from the gross and subtle body. And now following in his footsteps, the spiritual master's footsteps, I'm serving his lotus feet as well as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji. So we're learning that we're actually, Srila Prabhupada would always emphasize this, that we're not the body. We hear it so many times, you're not the body, you're not the body. And just a while ago I was reflecting that, we need to keep hearing that we're not the body. We need to always remind ourselves that we're not the body. The reason why is because we're trying to be devotees, and if we enter into devotional service thinking that we are this body, there are problems that arise. There's conflict in that. The prayer that goes after the one I just said is a very famous one by Lord Chaitanya, where he says, Naham vipro, nacha narapatir, naham napi vaisho nashudra. So he says, I'm not a brahmana. I'm not a griha patir. I'm not a householder. I'm not someone who takes care of the household. I'm not a vaishya, and I'm not a shudra. Naham varni nacha. Narapatir is in the first one. Naham varni nacha griha patir. Na vanasto yatirva. So he says, I'm not a brahmachari, I'm not a householder, I'm not a vanaprasana sannyasi. And then he goes on to say, Kintu prodyan nikila paramananda purnamritabder. And then this is like the famous line, Gopi bartu padakamalyor dasa dasa anudasa. So Lord Chaitanya is emphasizing that we need to remember that we're not our conditioning, we're not our varna, we're not our caste, we're not our ashram even. That we should actually only identify as the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. I was thinking of this story. I was hearing that Lord Chaitanya, he would often do these intimate kirtans at Shiva Sangam. And one time this brahmachari, he would only drink milk. I think his name was like Nrsinga Brahmachari. That's probably a different one. Basically, he was thinking, because I only drink milk and I'm so austere, I deserve to be in Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. Why won't they let me in? So he's begging Srivas to let him into the association. And he's like, oh, sorry, no. And he keeps trying, and then eventually Srivas lets him in. And so Lord Chaitanya, he's relishing the kirtan, and he stops and he says, something's off, Someone who's not supposed to be here is here. Someone has come in with the wrong mood. So what was wrong with his mood is because he identifies that I am a very austere brahmachari, and that's why I deserve to be here in Shiva Sangam. And so Lord Chaitanya, he rejected him. He said, get out. Eventually, he learned his lesson, and he dropped this mindset. But this is how we should identify ourselves. Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself is praying to be the dog of a Vaishnava. Not to be a Vaishnava even, but to be the servant of a Vaishnava. I was thinking a few weeks ago, I was in this class and they were talking about how you're not the body, you're not the body, you're not the body. And I was like, yeah, I'm not this body. And I was like, I really wanted to remember it, so I set this alarm on my phone that every few hours it would buzz and it'd go, you're not this body. And eventually I got kind of annoyed with it. I was like, oh, whatever, and I deleted the alarms. But it's important to remember this sometimes, It's when we chant, we should chant from this position that I am a soul trying to reconnect with Krishna. Yeah. And so if we want to cultivate this consciousness that I'm not the body, I'm a spirit soul, we have to consciously think of it. But also we were hearing later in these translations that in the association of pure devotees, we are hearing about Krishna. And through this process of hearing and chanting, naturally, we start to lose this conception of who we were. We start to lose this conception of, oh, I'm this, I'm that. And we start to identify as the servant of Krishna, the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. This is the effect of the hearing process. And so we both have to, we have to reject this, the faces we put on, the layers that we put on. Often in devotee communities, we can also add more layers. I am the temple treasurer. And so then you get really attached to that. But the thing is, in this material world, there's nothing permanent. You're not going to be the temple treasurer forever. Or, you might be in the spiritual world somehow. But we need to we need to see ourselves as servants and see that in Krishna's eyes, there's no difference. Service is absolute. I was standing over there just like the other day, and Jai Gauranga Prabhu, he walked up to me and he said, "Do you know what the deer's service to Krishna is?" And I was like, "No, what does the deer do to serve Krishna?" And he was saying that the gopis are very envious of the deer's service. And he explained that the deers, their service is to look affectionately at the Lord. That's what they do. And their husbands are able to be right next to them, and the deers can look. And so the gopis are jealous. I can't look at Krishna with my husband around. But then Jai Gauranga Prabhu, he started saying a little more that, we don't have to be, the best book distributor, the best mridanga player, the best this and that. We just have to simply have affection for the Lord. Look at the Lord with affection. And yeah, I was thinking we could try a little bit. We could take a second, look at Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji and have this meditation that I am not this body. I am your servant. I'm connected to you. And, we can look at our hands. We can look at our physical form and try to feel some detachment. So maybe we can do that for just 20 seconds, a minute or something. Try to visualize that we're an infinitesimal spiritual being apart from the mind and subtle body. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, so this is very nice to internally keep the mood that I am Krishna's servant. I'm connected to Krishna. I'm not anything externally. That's not who I am. I'm not a brahmana. I'm not a this or that. But then also we have to be a little practical, because while we may say that, we are still in this body and we are still interacting. It might be easy to say, we're all the feminine energy of God, and that means that we can just mingle about and do whatever we like, and oh, you're not a girl, I'm not a boy, so we have to also remain a little grounded in that we have to dovetail everything in the service of the Lord. Krishna has given us this body. Krishna has given us a certain nature. Krishna has given us certain services to do to him. And so in the beginning stages, that can be very helpful, is that we attach ourselves to these services. I am a preacher. I am a book distributor, and so when we really cater to that identity, it can help us in the beginning stages detach from our previous identity of I am the enjoyer, I am a, whatever we used to call ourselves. So we also do have to keep this balance, I guess, that internally we treat everyone with respect and we see that they are not this body. And then externally we do act according to our position with the intention of dovetailing what Krishna has given us. I wanted to read a short, actually this isn't very short, but I wanted to read a verse from Nectar of Instruction. It's very beautiful. It's the 6th verse. I think we just covered that recently. So we can just recite this together. It's the Brahma Samhita meter. Jishtvai svabhava janitarva puchashadoshar na prakritam tvamiha bhakta janasya pashyat Gangam basam na kalu buddha fena pankar Brahma dravatvam agachat chati niradharmai. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges. which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. So, it says a pure devotee does not identify with the body. We are trying to become pure devotees as well. So we also should be conscious not to identify with this body. And then when we look at the other devotees, of course we have our material similarities and familiarities, and we get along with each other based on some level of conditioning, but we should keep this perspective that, they're a soul and they're not this, their body is spiritual. Their body is pure like the Ganges when they're a pure devotee. But even the other devotees around us, we understand they're a pure living entity. Last night we were we were doing our outreach program, the mantra night, and Paramrita picked out this nice verse from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he says that, I'm sure you remember it better than I do. You want to say it in the mic, the translation?
Basically, it's saying whatever has been, whatever is,
Whatever I used to call
accompanied
mine.
within the words I and mine, whatever has any relation to the words I and mine, I no longer, think of them that way. They all belong to you. And then the second verse that we sang was, even my own self I no longer consider to be mine. I am yours. I offer at your lotus feet.
Yeah, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur was advising us that whatever we consider to be ourselves is to be offered to Krishna. It's not to be enjoyed. We're not to enjoy our positions. We're not to enjoy our birth, enjoy our body, but we're meant to offer it. Whatever, we can't pretend that we don't have any differences between each other. Prabhupada, he didn't emphasize this equality that Americans tried to push. We acknowledge that we have our material differences, and we just simply try to offer them back to Krishna. Krishna says, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. He says, these living entities, they're mine. These are my fragmental parts and parcels. So we should understand that we are Krishna's. We are not, this is Independence Day. Of course, every Independence Day, this is mentioned in the class. But we are not independent from Krishna. This is our true identity. If we want to realize our identity is Dasa Das Anudasa, servant of Krishna. So any comments, reflections, or questions? Ajit Prabhu.
Thank you very much for the nice class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I have a couple of questions. My first one regards to verse 29. I just think it's interesting that in the Bhagavatam, there's a mention of somebody who has a body that is both male and female. It says you can be either male or female or sometimes eunuch. And if you look at the actual translation, the word, Sanskrit, it basically means like both. You're both male and female. I just feel like we don't acknowledge that enough. We say either you're a man or a woman, but it seems like there's kind of an in-between. What do you think?
Well, the translation, it seems to indicate that, sometimes we're a man and sometimes we're a woman. Sometimes we're a eunuch, sometimes we're a demigod, an animal. I remember in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's book, he talks about how, transgenders, for example, it's a result of the subtle body carrying a previous identity, in a sense, from a previous life or previous attachment. And so in that way, they are, in Kali Yuga, everything's very mixed up, and we don't really in the material world, everything is mixed up. And so sometimes we, just like with the Varnas, I can't say, oh, I'm a pure Shudra, like everything's so mixed up. There's no clear family lines. And there's also, I believe in the 11th canto, it says that the men will look like women and appear like women and act like women, and the women will act like men. And basically everything is going to get a little muddy in the sense of our roles and the sense of our, caste, gender, varna, and stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up this verse. Do you have any more thoughts?
Thank you very much for addressing that. I was also wondering, I don't know if I fully understand what it means that we are Prakriti. Just to me, Prakriti seems like it's like material energy, material nature, but we're spiritual. So how are we Prakriti? I don't totally understand that.
Yeah. I believe Prakriti just means the energy of the Lord, right? Yeah, para and apara Prakriti. So we are tatashta, we're marginal. So we're not material energy. We are spiritual by nature. Yeah, I believe it means we're the energy of the Lord. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that? Okay, yes, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is the enjoyer. Prakriti is the enjoyed. Also, Bhagavad Gita has nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. So it's, what were the Sanskrit words? Purusha, Prakriti, and yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question. I was thinking when I read this, it says that, it makes it very clear. I've heard before, we've been Brahma in our past life. We've been through so many different scenarios, so many different bodies. And so what are we really settling for? And what are we getting attached to? If we used to be a demigod, we used to be the sun god, we used to be Lord Brahma. And so right now I'm American, yes. It's quite pointless. It's, maybe you guys heard that story of Indra and I guess I'll just tell it really quick, but Indra made an offense to his spiritual master. So he got cursed to become a hog. And then, they needed the king of the demigods back. So Lord Brahma comes and he says, hey, Indra, your sentence is up. You don't have to be a hog anymore. And he's like, what do you mean? I love this. I love my family. I got my kids here. I got my nice stool, my nice mud and stuff like that. And Brahma's like, you used to be the king of heaven. You need to come back. And he's like, I'm not coming back. And I believe Brahma he kills the hog wife. And eventually it wakes him up that I'm the king of heaven, and he goes back. Prabhupada Priya, did you have a comment?
Kind of a question, I guess, because in some of these verses there's making the point that all of our suffering is just a dream. This whole material world is an illusion, and if we try to solve our material problems with a material solution, it's just like shifting the weight from your head to the shoulder, or one shoulder to another shoulder, and it doesn't solve the problem. And so he says, in the same way, we can't counteract a dream by having a hallucination. The only way to counteract the bad dream is to wake up. So someone could think, let's say somebody's going through some difficulties, situational difficulties, relationship difficulties, legal difficulties, whatever, health difficulties. They think, oh, this is just a dream. I'm just going to focus on my Krishna consciousness and just try to wake up and just not worry about all these problems, because actually it's all illusion. It doesn't really exist. So it strikes me as that being a little unhealthy. So what is a healthy way to acknowledge the fact that actually it is, the suffering that we experience in this world is a dream, but at the same time, it's what we have to, we can't just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It kind of does exist as well as doesn't exist, so you have to navigate that.
Yeah, nursing group? Okay. I was thinking there's this concept of spiritual bypassing that people talk about sometimes. And so you kind of pretend to be so advanced that nothing touches you, and oh, I don't have any trauma, I don't have it. And I wouldn't say that it's incorrect to say this doesn't affect me, but it takes being at a certain stage. Like we see the Goswamis, they're just taking a little bit of buttermilk every day, and so they're at the stage where they can say, my bodily pains are illusion, my any sufferings that come up are illusion, because they have realized their identity and they've detached from the body. But for us, it's not so practical to try to do that. Nisingaripu, do you?
But Srila Prabhupada was, it was around, like someone saying like the material world is false, that it's not real. It doesn't kind of, sort of like what you're saying in one sense, you're just kind of like, there's legal problems, but whatever, I'm a devotee, I don't need to worry about it. And so Prabhupada was saying it's not that it's false, it's just that it's temporary. And so it was just reminding me of that it's, you still have to like deal with the day-to-day, like I'm in a body, I need to eat food, but I'm not this body and that's not who I am. And so I don't want to like become more and more associated with that, but you'd have to do the needful in a sense. It just reminded me of that, what you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that specific instance, I would often have a trouble like understanding what's the difference between real and temporary, like what's Prabhupada saying. And then I read Prabhupada make this analogy that it's like anger. So if someone's really angry at you, and you say, oh, that's not real, then it's not correct. But we understand anger to be temporary. It will pass. It'll move on. So similarly, this material world, it is happening. It is here, but it'll pass. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
In the Bhagavatam, this existence in the material world is compared to like a dream. So like, if you woke up the next morning, you told me, oh, I had this really bad nightmare, and you're really like affected by it, I wouldn't just be like, it's just a dream. It's not real. It still like happened to you, even though it's not like permanent, and it's like in another dimension of life.
Go clean interview. Oh.
I was just thinking about just like the embassies, right? The spiritual embassy. Prabhupada says, he talks about the ISKCON temples, how they're embassies. The embassies, although they are physically located within the precincts of a certain country, still the rules of that particular country, they don't apply. So yes, this material world is like dreamlike state, but as Narasimha Prabhupada said, right? It is temporary. But when we talk about practicing devotional service, Krishna consciousness, it is like just like that embassy existing here. It is a reality, pure reality.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just on the same topic, my thought was that there may be some very advanced souls who literally like are totally aloof, who are not affected by these things and just don't get involved in them. And so for them, it's just, they see it as it's just as useless as a dream. But to the extent that we are affected by the, illusory representations of this material world, then those sufferings that come to us while we're in this world, although we can see them as illusory, but they're instructive, right? Because if they're purposeful. Yeah, that everything is for a purpose. So if we're given a certain type of suffering and we're actually feeling the pain of that suffering, that's meant to show us something. It's meant to teach us something and impel us to, basically take the spiritual life. Whereas somebody who's already on the transcendental platform, they're not affected by that thing. They don't have to react to it. But because we are affected by it, then we need to respond to it in a responsible way until we are able to come to the transcendental platform.
Okay.
That's one thought.
Manjari Gopika?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. It's great to have you back. I just wanted to share a thought I just had, which is about spiritual bypassing, which I understand to be is when using religious philosophy to deny something's happening or to tell people that they shouldn't feel angry or they shouldn't feel upset or that this isn't a big deal. It's kind of like that. But I was just thinking about when we experience that, it's never coming from an advanced devotee, a pure devotee, but rather in my own interactions with pure devotees and my observations is when they find out that a devotee is suffering materially from their body or from some natural disaster, they are very eager to pray for that person. And I always think about too, my husband had a very serious spinal condition a couple of years ago, and he had to have very risky surgery. And His Holiness Giriraj Swami and His Holiness Ritadwaja Swami came to see us right before. And, I was trying to act all devotee-like, but at the end, I just had to reveal my heart to them that I was really anxious and I was scared. And I felt somehow guilty for feeling that way because I'd received so much mercy from the devotees. I was kind of beating myself up, like, why don't you trust Krishna already? And they were so gentle with me. They just I wish I could remember their exact quotes, but they just stopped me like mid-sentence. And they said, it is perfectly normal to worry about someone you love. So I was just thinking about how advanced devotees never deny the troubles we're experiencing.
Yeah, what a nice point to end on. Yeah. All right, 8:33. I think we can wrap up here, take some breakfast prasadam and put it in our body. Yeah, build up our spiritual body. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam.